Welcome to the Her Vibe is Pretty podcast, where you'll be guided on how to step up into your evolved woman,
design your dream life, and start living it. Let's get vibey.
What's up, Pretty Vibe Tribe? Welcome back to another episode of Her Vibe is Pretty. Mary, let's just jump right in today. Tell me, I'm dying to know, what is making you feel high vibe lately?
Girl, there is one thing that I'm feeling extra high vibe about, and that is my latest app update. And
Ooh, tell us more.
We have been working so freaking hard on this thing. So I launched a yoga app about 2 years ago now, and a couple of these features that we've wanted since the very freaking beginning are finally released. So we have favorites on there. We have a new course outline on there. We have custom onboarding so that we can get to know your like yoga needs and desires even better, because in the future, little sneak peek, we plan on having like custom recommendations based on the kind of classes that you say that you like, the length of class, what level you're at, all of those things. We have a way for you to track the classes that you've already practiced along with. But the one that I'm most excited about is the favorites, because it seems so basic to me, like that should have always been there. But designing apps, as you know, it just takes a lot longer to do everything than you think it will. So having the ability to like favorite your classes, and then it goes into its own little category so that you'll be able to know exactly which classes you love and you can practice them and they'll be right at your fingertips. So
wow, that's amazing.
I know it's been a long time coming, but I'm hype about that being available now for everyone. And it's a free app to download too. So we'll include a link in the show notes for that if you want to get your yoga on at home.
Yeah, guys, definitely check it out.
Yeah. What are you excited about or vibey about, Sarah?
I'm vibey about something small today, and it's these flowers that are right next to me. So last week was our 1-year anniversary of the podcast, and one of my best friends, Kenzie, brought me flowers. She surprised me with flowers and a cute little card congratulating us. She's a diehard listener, and so is her daughter, which is really cool. Her daughter is 10 now. And yeah, so it just made my day. I love flowers. I'm definitely not one of those people who is like, flowers are a waste of money because they die. I love flowers so much. I love buying them for people. I love receiving them. They smell so good. They're so beautiful. And that's what's making me feel high vibe.
They're high vibe for sure. Do you remember that the first time we hung out, you brought me flowers?
Yeah, I totally do remember that.
Were they Easter lilies?
Yeah.
A year ago, of course.
Oh my gosh.
The time we hung out was right around when we launched the podcast.
Amazing. I love it.
Oh, I love that. So good. Well, we have a really cool topic to talk about today. And it's kind of funny how we came to this topic too, because Sarah, as you guys know, is all about her morning routine and she freaking kills it. I was so on it for so long and then started to fall off the bandwagon a little bit. But as I'm getting back into it, I have been including inspirational reading into my morning routine every day. And I read a passage out of the book Inward by Young Pueblo. And it was funny because I read it during my morning routine. And then after I was finished with that, and I got on my phone, I got on Instagram, I go look at Sarah's story, and she posted one of the exact passages that I read that day.
Which is weird because I just randomly flipped to it. So this book, Mary actually bought it for me. It's weird because I haven't been reading it. Like I incorporated it into the morning routine for a little bit and then I stopped. And the other day I just felt pulled to, so I've been doing every morning with this book is I open it and I close my eyes and I just ask my body, what do I need to see today? And so I randomly flipped to that quote, and then Mary messages me and goes, I read this morning. And I'm like, no way, because I randomly flipped open to it. So I was like, I feel like that's a sign that we need to do an episode around that topic.
And I love it because, so let me read you that quote from the book. And then I also want to read you another one that it reminded me of, because the other one is one of my all-time favorite quotes that has been one of my favorite quotes for years. So it goes in the book Inward. It says, I gathered my habits and started releasing the ones that can never lead me to lasting freedom and joy. Okay, so I'm going to read that one more time, short and sweet. I gathered my habits and started releasing the ones that can never lead me to lasting freedom and joy. So good. So powerful. That's, you guys, that is what every single like poem in this book, every page, short and sweet, but man, they like pack a freaking punch.
Yeah.
Reminded me of another quote. It's kind of like a graphic, like it's not really a quote, if that makes sense, but it's like a graphic. And it says, make a list of the things that make you happy. Make a list of the things that you do every day. Compare the lists and adjust accordingly. And again, same idea. It comes back to that theme of observing our thoughts, observing our feelings, observing our pattern behavior in our life, and starting to take note. What makes me feel good? What makes me feel bad? And then start to adjust accordingly. You know, start to make shifts in the things that you do day in and day out, because we're humans. We have the power to do that. You know, we have a choice. We can make these changes, and they don't have to happen overnight. But we want to go and dive a little bit deeper on some of the habits that we have personally experienced and shifted and changed, as well as, you know, like, why should you even be doing this and how to start going about doing it. So by the end of this episode, you guys will know exactly what you need to do to start putting these beautiful quotes into practice. So Sarah, do you want to start sharing some of the habits that you've shifted and changed?
Yeah, sure. So one thing that came up that I want to share is one of the first things you said is like, why is it important to do this? And before I dive into the ones that I've shifted thus far, what came up for me when you said that is, if we don't do this, then we basically just choose a life of suffering, and we choose to kind of just waste away this lifetime. And I like probably sound a little harsh when I'm saying that, but that's okay, because tough love is necessary sometimes, and it can be tough to accept this. But I'm just thinking about, and when I share the habits that I've shifted myself, if I would have stayed in those habits that kept me trapped in these vicious cycles that were really unfulfilling and vibrating on a lower level, if I would have stayed in them and never made the decision to learn how to shift and release them, my life would be so much less fulfilling than it is right now. So when I think of why it's important to release these, it's like, because why would you want to be anything but free and joyful in this one lifetime as the you that's you right now?
Exactly. What stands out for me is the thing that I think we forget is how in control we are of so many aspects of our life. Now, of course, things can happen to you. You know, accidents happen or certain circumstances come up. But there are also so many factors and things that we put into place in one way or another. And we have the choice of whether we continue to do those things and give them time and attention or not. And so that's where you can evaluate, and you can say, it doesn't mean that nothing bad's ever going to happen to you again, but we can control how we respond to that. And we can control the things in our life that we can control. So that's what we're becoming more aware of. And so for me, that's the why, is like, I don't want to just kind of let life live me. I want to live my life. And I want to change the things that I'm not happy about in my life, the things I'm able to change. And there are so many things that we can shift and change.
Yeah. And I see it too. I'm such a visual person. So if you are as well, I want to share this. I see the me that was living life with these habits that were keeping me on that lower vibration. I almost see it as like I was living in a dark, stormy cloud. And I didn't want to live life in that dark, stormy cloud anymore. So I broke out of it. And it's like, now I'm living in the sunshine with flowers and beautiful white clouds and birds and nature. And that's just kind of how I see it. It's like I'm living in this bright world now, not to say that nothing bad ever happens, and nothing bad won't ever happen again, because it will. But it's like I approach it so differently now, and I'm able to do that because I've released some of these habits. So just a few examples that I'll throw out there of habits that were keeping me small and trapped and making me feel the opposite of free and joy. Obviously, you guys all know the habit of turning to food and emotional eating and binge eating that kept me really trapped and small. And binge and emotional eating and turning to food would have never ever led me to freedom or joy, even though it definitely provided moments of ease and moments of, what would you call it, like, I don't know, like when I was in the eating, when I was eating the cookies or the chips or whatever it was, the ice cream, I was feeling bliss out for a moment. But at the end of the day, binge eating and emotional eating is the opposite of freedom. Food freedom now is what I stand for, is what I believe in, is what I teach to others. Because when you are in that cycle of turning to food, you feel so trapped. So turning to food is a habit that I've released that helped me discover freedom and joy. The habit of Netflix. And you guys, y'all know I'm not against Netflix. Like, I definitely still watch Netflix and I still love some shows on Netflix. But I will say that there was a point in my life, there's been multiple points in my life like this, where I was just so in the habit of turning to Netflix. That's all I'd want to do. I'd want to avoid and put off work to watch my shows. I'd want to get done with my work day and go right to the TV. I would come home, like back before I started my business. I remember I'd go to my job and I'd come home and I'd go right to my bedroom. I'd turn on the Netflix. It wouldn't go off until I was like so exhausted that I'd fall asleep. And once I was done with one show, I'd be like, all right, what's the next show? Give me another show. I need another show. I was so addicted to Netflix, and that kept me, once again, super trapped. It didn't feel freeing. It didn't feel freeing in my body, which we'll get into as well. Yeah. So those are a couple things. Doubting myself is a habit that I needed to release to find freedom and joy. Putting little things off is a habit that I used to have. Oh my gosh, you guys. A bill would come, some letter would come telling me that I needed to call my car company or my credit card company. I just put those things off. RSVPing to things. Like, I'm just trying to think of the list. There's just papers would end up on my table that I would put off, or things that I had to do, I would put them off if they didn't feel fun. And it kept me with this dark cloud over my head lingering.
Heavy, even though they're easy little things, it feels like you've got so much to do all the time. Yeah. I listened to a podcast. I honestly can't even remember. This was a long time ago, so I don't even remember where I read this, but it was like they made this rule for themselves that if the task took less than 5 minutes, let's say, they would do it immediately instead of adding it to their to-do list and then ending up with this long to-do list of all these teeny little tasks that ultimately could have been done probably before they even took the time to like write it out on their to-do list.
Yeah. So that was a habit that I was in, that once I cut it, I felt so much more free. Once I just started doing the things, so much more free. And then my last habit that I just thought of is being tight with money and like being scarce with money and being in the mindset that I can afford that. That's too much money. I can't pay that. I don't have enough. That habit feels so small and so contracting, and it does not feel good, and it does not feel free, and it does not feel joyful. So releasing that habit and shifting from scarcity energy and scarcity mindset into abundant energy and abundant mindset has felt extremely freeing for me.
That's such a good one. And that's such a common one. I bet every single person listening to this has something in their life that they, whether it's money or you name it, something else that they feel very scarce energy around versus that abundant energy around. Those were all really good. Your Netflix one reminded me of one of mine, which was social media and wasting time mindlessly scrolling. And you guys know, like, I love social media. I have built my business on social media. It has connected me to so many people I never would have been connected with before. So this isn't to say social media, Instagram specifically, is a bad thing, because I love it and I use it in so many positive ways. But I would catch myself with Instagram, my goodness, TikTok. Like, can we just agree that that is the most addictive app I've ever used?
It truly is.
Where does time go? Like, it warps time, I swear to God. But
they knew what they were doing. That's their goal.
They were doing, and they did a damn good job at it. But I found that when I was just scrolling through, it just made me feel so small, so wasteful, so unproductive. And again, I think there's that difference between saying like, hey, I choose to go on here, to scroll. I just want to see what's going on. I want to see what people are creating today. There's good there, but I was doing it out of just habit. Like, oh, my mind has a blank moment, I'm going to go check Instagram. And that also goes hand in hand with following certain Instagram pages. I found that there were some pages that I followed that made me feel like shit, whether I was comparing my business to theirs, whether I was comparing my body to someone, whether I was comparing my spiritual journey or my yoga practice to someone else, you name it. There were just some pages that didn't make me feel good and, made me compare myself to them or just make me feel small. And so I started getting pretty strict about who I follow and who I fill my feed with, because again, like I said, it's a platform that I spend a lot of time on. And then similar to yours, another habit I stopped doing, and this is an ongoing process, is letting my limiting beliefs run the show. And for me, that came down to excuses for things. So when I would see something that I wanted or something that I desired, and I would start to hear that voice creep up like, well, you can't have this because, or, well, it's easier for this person because of this, or you can't do that. Who do you think you are? I'm catching that voice a lot faster than I was before. And that is helping me stop those limiting beliefs in their tracks so that I can rewrite it and reframe my way of thinking as I go forward.
So good.
Makes me feel so much bigger and more expansive and like anything is possible. And it's been insane to see the things that have happened and started to unfold once I put that habit into practice. And the other one's kind of funny. But as you guys know, I love true crime, whether it's podcasts or shows. And it's funny because now that I'm getting into like the late stages of my pregnancy, I am like just trying to fill my brain with all of the positivity, all of the joy, all of the excitement and abundance of like this next chapter of bringing a little baby into the world. And I find that this thing that I used to love, true crime, is like stressing me out, and it's like not putting me in a good mental state. So again, doesn't mean I'm like never going to watch crime shows again or never listen to crime podcasts again. But for right now, I'm realizing like I need a break from that sort of content. And so I'm just kind of switching up like what I'm filling my mind with when it comes to the books I'm reading, the podcasts I'm listening to, the shows I'm tuning into, and that sort of thing.
That's such a good one. That brought me back to the time where I watched You on Netflix.
Oh yeah. That one's
and oh my gosh. I think that when I watched that, I was in one of those states that I was just referring to where I was just like super into Netflix. And I remember the way that like that show made my body feel so contracted and like just off. And that's how I knew that, okay, this needs to go. I will not be watching that show anymore.
Yeah, I have a couple that have been like that too. I'm trying to think of, the last one we watched was about some sort of like drug cartel. It wasn't true crime. It was like a fiction crime show. But I was like having dreams about it. Like it was just like obsessing my brain.
Yeah.
And I just, same thing where I was like, I think I just need a break from this for a little while. And so right now, I'm really enjoying the more lighthearted. I'm like listening to a romance book, which I never do. That's like not my thing at all, but it's what I need right now. And again, it doesn't mean that these things are like set in stone and you can never watch them again, but it's like, pay attention to that. And so I think that's what we want to share about too, is just like, you know, how do you put this into practice? Like, how do you start observing how you're feeling and observing your habits, and then start to shift them so that you can start to live the life that you want to live, instead of like letting life live you?
Yeah, I say it's just about tuning into your body truly, because a lot of the times before we get into this work, we're super turned off to like what our body's actually feeling. But tuning into your body and the way that your brain feels, because I'm just reflecting on how I started to notice that these habits were pulling me down. And it was because what would happen is I would start to observe when one show ended and another was about to start, or after a binge, or in the midst of having a day where I'm doubting myself, I started to notice that my mind would almost feel numb. It would feel like numb, and my body would feel low vibe and just lethargic. And that for me, and you can definitely share your experience, Mary, but that for me, just noticing how my body was feeling was a huge sign for me, because once again, I don't even know what word to use, but besides contracted, it felt the opposite of free. It felt the opposite of joy. And once I started to tune into that, I believe that our souls and our evolved selves communicate to us through sensations. Sometimes maybe they'll communicate through words, but for the most part, I've heard from my highest self through sensations, through how my body is feeling when I'm doing certain things or around certain people, or certain thoughts are flowing through the mind, or I'm hearing certain things. So really just tuning the sensations with every single thing that I do has been a game changer for me.
Absolutely. I completely agree with everything that you just said. The thing that comes to mind for me is like a way for you to recognize the habits in your life is like, when you're done doing it, are you feeling good and inspired? Or are you feeling kind of crappy and like almost like guilty? You're like, oh, I just did that again.
Yeah.
That to me is a sign like, okay, something's not in alignment here. Something's a little bit off. And I know for me, it's like when I'm done scrolling and I realize a freaking hour just went by, I don't feel good after that. I'm like, damn it, like, how did this time just fly by like that? Where when I am doing something creative or I'm doing something productive, or like after I do a yoga class or like record a yoga class, I feel so good when I'm done. And it just shows me like those are the things, the styles of things. Or when I read a book, like let's talk about something like chill and relaxing. Like when I read a really good book and I'm just like sucked into it, I feel really good when I do that, versus feeling guilty when I just mindlessly scroll on TikTok for good Lord knows how long, because it's so addictive. And then also when I start to see different, when I see people that I admire doing things that I'm like, oh, I wish I did that each day, or I wish I had time to do this. Those are the things I need to be filling my time with. Like, I think people are so quick to say, and like, I've totally said this at times before too, it is literally just an excuse. I don't have time. I don't have time. I don't have time.
Totally. And
we'll see, actually, like, hold me to this. I want to see how I feel after the baby is here.
Yeah.
How I feel about this. But I'm a true believer that we make time for the things that are a priority to us. And so I somehow find a few hours each day to scroll on my phone, yet I don't always have time to do these other things that I want to do.
Totally.
And again, to me, it's just an excuse. It's like,
Absolutely.
if I really wanted to do that different habit, read more books, let's say, then I would be taking that time that I'm just mindlessly scrolling and use that instead of scrolling on my phone. I'd open my Kindle app and read it.
Right.
So
exactly.
It's just taking the habit that I don't like and don't really feel good around, and then shifting it to something that I want to be creating more time for.
And also it's important to remember too that we adapt always. I'm just thinking about my life now as an entrepreneur versus my life at the start of my entrepreneurial journey, and the amount of things that I can check off of my list while still feeling high vibe, motivated, inspired, refreshed, and relaxed now compared to how many I could do at the beginning. The difference is just crazy. And that's because as I added in things, as I added in a morning routine, as I added in one thing at a time to my to-do list, I adapted. And it might have like felt a little bit hard to set aside time at the beginning. It did feel hard. Not might have, it definitely did feel hard to carve out that time for a morning routine and for full body exhales at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. But I did it knowing that it was going to benefit me. And now it just feels so natural, you know? And I feel like that's how it's going to go with baby too. It's like you're adding in this baby to your life and you're going to adapt. We are like, that's what humans do. We adapt. We always have, and we always will, to environments, to situations, to people. We're just like creatures of adaptation.
Yeah. So you're totally right. And I think the thing too is to remind yourself that these things aren't like the end all be all, you know, they shift, they change. So whether you are shifting in your career or starting a new business venture or having a baby like I am, or just growing as a human, you know, things will shift and change. Your priorities will shift and change, and things that you used to put a lot of value on may become more important, or they may become less important. And so allow those ebbs and flows to happen. And I think like the biggest thing that I know I want you guys to do is to take that time to just become aware. And I know for me, practices that have helped me become more aware have been the triad, the three that we talk about all the time: breath work, meditation, and yoga. I mean, those three practices alone, I'll add in a little fourth guy of journaling has helped me too. But those practices are really great ways to get more in tune with yourself instead of just like living life as if you're in this like grand fog of a life and just like letting things unfold. You just start to like wipe that fog away and just start to see and observe like, oh, this is making me feel this way. And maybe it's, you know, Instagram pages you follow, like I said, that was a big one for me. Maybe it's people that you're spending time with. Maybe it's things at your job. Maybe it's your job together. I mean, that was a huge one for me, was like, I was not feeling satisfied at my job. Now, I didn't just feel that way one day and then like quit the next day. You know, I took some time, but I knew that wasn't something that was giving me the joy and the freedom that I wanted. So I had to change that habit. I mean, a job is literally like a habit, just like anything else that we do. You know, we think it's this, you know, huge thing because it takes up so much of our time and our energy and our focus, which makes it, in my opinion, that much more important to find that aligning work for yourself so that you are feeling that joy and abundance on a much more regular basis. But it kind of, that feeling of not being satisfied and not feeling happiness from what I was doing every day led me to change the habits that let me start my own business. That's a huge example.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be huge like that.
Yeah, totally. Another thing too that you could do is look at where you're spending your time all day and decide, okay, what is in alignment with what I want my life to look like and what isn't in alignment with what I want my life to look like. So you guys all know, like, having some sort of a vision or an idea of who you want to be and how you want to live is super important, so that you can always sift through the little things that you're doing throughout the day and decide, is this in alignment with that or not? So just running through mine, the ones that I already had talked about, binge and emotional eating was not in alignment with where I am going because, first of all, it took up a lot of time and it made me feel really low vibe, which left me with no motivation to create the business that I'm creating. Same with Netflix, same with doubting myself, same with putting the little things off. Like, that's not how you show up in one area of your life is how you're going to show up in all the rest of the area. So putting those little things off, even though they were just like bills and things in my personal life, it was definitely, I could see where it was leaking over to my business. And that's not the type of entrepreneur I am. Being tight with money, that definitely was not in alignment with what I'm building and what I'm creating, because I always want to be investing in mentors and memberships and programs to keep me growing and evolving. And that takes investing. And I also just desire financial freedom. I want to be able to do things and not have to ask the bank account for permission.
Right.
And so being tight with money, what you focus on, you create more of. So that was not putting me in alignment with the life that I actually want to live and create, which is one of abundance in every single area. So one time, one of my old coaches, he made us write down for like 3 days from the moment you woke up. You set timers on your phone for every 10 minutes. Maybe it was 5 minutes. And every X amount of minutes, that timer went off and you have to write down what you were just doing with the last 10 minutes. You did it all day. And I did that once. And it's just kind of mind blowing as to where your time goes. You don't even really realize it when you're not consciously aware of it. So that's just another idea too. If you're not like fully grasping like the meditation, journaling, breathwork yet, just simply set timers throughout your day and write down what you do with your time. And then observe it at the end of the day and be like, oh, wow, I spend way more time on social media and on Facebook than I thought I did. Like that is a half hour a day I could be using for something that's more in alignment with where I want to go. You'll feel so much more better once you start embodying it too. Like you'll have more energy. I was thinking something that was coming up in my life lately is that Zach and I, he would get home from work and we just kind of would just like chill and talk about our days, but then like talk about like just kind of random stuff, nothing that was super deep, and then like shower and go to bed. And I just wasn't loving the vibration of that. I love him and I love our conversations most of the time, but there was just some kind of weird energy. So I decided this past month to incorporate a nightly routine because it was just feeling off. And last night, for example, he came home and I don't usually work out with him. I usually work on my own, but I was like, I'm going to go work out with you. So we worked out and then we came home and like we showered and what else did we do? We journaled, I read a little bit, and then we went to bed and it just felt so much better and aligning. I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like it's truly a feeling. So
yeah, no,
all the feelings.
It's an awareness. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
If you don't take the time to do this, what happens is 10 years, 20 years, 30 years fly by and you're like, whoa, where did those decades go?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're able to slow down in the moment and tune in with the things that make you feel good and then do more of the things that make you feel good, it makes life that extra special. It makes your life more intentional. And we all have the power to do it. We just need to choose to do it. Right. So this is a very like take action episode, and it's not anything crazy and major, whether it's try setting your timer, start observing, your feelings throughout the day. Maybe you become more aware of your screen time on your phone. I know now phones, like the iPhone at least, has the option to like look at how much time you're spending on your phone if that's something for you. Or maybe it's something else. You can do what that second quote says, make a list of the things that make you happy. Like right now, go grab some paper, grab a pen, make a list of the things that make you happy, make a list of the things that you spend your day doing, compare those lists, adjust accordingly. Add more of those things that bring you that joy, that abundance, that freedom. Add more of those things into your life. When you hear those excuses creep up, remember that that's all that they are. They're made up excuses in our brain.
Okay, one more thing to wrap this up.
Yeah.
I want you guys to acknowledge that as a society, we're addicted to suffering. So when you start to do this, it's probably going to feel hard. Because I would bet that you're probably, even though this may be hard to admit, and I was too, and there's still moments where I find the mind going to this, we are addicted to suffering because we have, and suffering might seem like a big word, but suffering is just feeling trapped and feeling stagnant and feeling unfulfilled and feeling low vibe and hanging out in habits and things and words and conversations with people that are lower vibrating. And because we're addicted to that, because we're taught to be addicted to that from such a young age, it can be really hard to get out of it because it's like trying to break an addiction. Suffering to the minds in us feels safe and feels certain and feels comforting. That's all the minds have probably known up until whenever you started this journey. So just be aware of that. That's like a whole topic for another day, but be aware that we are addicted to the suffering, but you have the power to pull yourself out of that and make another choice and take control of your life and make it what you want it to be. Make it feel free, and joyful.
I love that so much. I'm literally writing that down because we have to have an episode on that. I have so many things I want to say, but we will save it for that episode. So thank you guys so much for being here, for tuning in to another episode of Her Vibe is Pretty. If you haven't already, be sure to join our Facebook group, which is Her Vibe is Pretty Podcast. We are also on Instagram at Her Vibe is Pretty Podcast. If you listen to this episode, if you got something out of it, we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to share it in your stories, take a screenshot, tag a friend, share the episode with friends and family to help spread the word. It means the world to us. And that is a really easy way that you guys can have a positive influence on your inner circle. And then last but not least, we have merch now, and it is incredible and beautiful, and we love seeing you guys in your vibey sweatshirts. So if you are interested in getting your hands on some merch, you can do that by going to our website, www.hervibeisprettypodcast.com, and check out our shop. So thank you guys for being here. We love you, and we will catch
you guys. Bye.
Bye.